This is a News Laundry podcast and you're listening to NL Hafta.
अंग्रेज अपना लगान और न्यूज लॉन्ड्री अपना हफ्ता कभी नहीं छोड़ते. We're back with another episode of Hafta and I'm sitting in the wonderful office of News Laundry and I am thrilled to see that lights are working, things are looking clean, rent has hopefully been paid because many of you have subscribed and you pay to keep news free. So muchos gracias कहते हैं ना स्पेनिश में, ऐसे ही कुछ कहते हैं.
Yes.
So those of you who do subscribe, thank you so much for your
Gracias
largesse.
only, not muchos gracias.
Yeah,
It was like much. Yeah.
ठीक है. So our Spanish speaking audience,
Many thanks.
I hope you have been pandered to. But our other audience, the more important ones, who pay to keep news free, who subscribe, we appreciate your subscriptions. I think more than ever we have seen how with the farmers' protests, subscription-driven models are way more honest and effective in their journalism than those that are heavily dependent on government ads and large corporations. That has something to do with it. And of course, we have wonderful reporters, Nidhi Suresh and Basant, who have been doing an amazing job, and our editors. So thank you all very much for subscribing and paying to keep news free. And please continue to do that. Those of you who have been listening to the Hafta for free, your days are numbered because I think by next week, we will have our paywall up and then you'll have to pay to access the News Laundry Hafta. But do subscribe because from Diwali to Christmas, we have a wonderful scheme where you get lots of cool NL merch and swag, which you can get as part of the subscription package. And it is the best gift to give on Christmas rather than things that will not add any value to the world in general while adding value to your life as well. So 2 in 1. And finally, before I introduce the panel, we have a new podcast player. We have spent a lot of money, time, energy, effort into making this a podcast player comparable to any podcast player in the world. So do access it through newslaundry.com. On the top right-hand corner, there's the logo of a mic. So click on that. This podcast, you can skip to subjects that you want to. You can speed it up. You can slow it down. And it also starts off from where you stopped. So it has all those functions that were inconveniences in the last podcast player. So many of you are accessing our podcast through, your other Stitcher or iTunes or whatever it is. But you can come directly to our website and access this podcast player, which is very smooth and efficient, let me assure you. And you can also see all the other stuff we do. On that note, today is the 3rd of December, Thursday, and we're recording at 12:30 in the afternoon. And on the panel with me in office, Manisha Pande. Hi, Manisha.
Hello.
Mehraj D Lone. Hi, Mehraj.
Hello.
Raman sir, who is somewhere in the hills, recuperating after his COVID bout. Hi, sir.
Hi.
And Raman sir keeps joining meetings on Zoom from his cottage in the hills with crisp blue skies and sun. And
I'm going to drive back just soon after the Hafta recording.
Chalo,
I'll just drive back home.
I'm glad. So then I won't feel miserable and sado when you join from the wonderful climbs, and I won't say unpleasant things like I hope a bird shits on your laptop and stuff like that. And joining us is also our wonderful reporter Nidhi Suresh. Nidhi, where are you? You're home right now? You're at the ground, where you've been for the last 3 days?
Today I'm at home, Abhinandan, and I could have come to office because I don't live far away, but I feel I've been exposed so much and you all have just recovered. So it doesn't make sense for me to come sit there.
So I do hope you're having your zinc tablets, vitamin C and your vitamin D.
Yes.
I had put it on the group. Everyone should be having those.
Yes, I am.
You do know this is a scam, no? The vitamin scam. It's just to create expensive urine. That's all.
Expensive urine.
Because all of it comes out in your pee.
That's only what you don't digest.
And most of it you can't digest because these hardcore ones that you get, you can't digest most of it.
So we have just demonstrated how you should not listen to WhatsApp. That is what Manisha was doing. Don't think she actually believes it. We are not from WhatsApp.
No, you should have
University.
natural sources of vitamin B, C and D.
You should
and
listen to
zinc.
doctors and not journalists. I'm just saying.
Doctors are in on it, man. Anyway.
So before we get into, and there's lots to discuss, I'm thrilled to be back in office. Let's get the headlines, Manisha.
Yeah. Farmer unions have begun talks with the centre. They've agreed to revert with objections. In fact, the second round of meeting between 35 farmer unions and the centre is happening as we record this show. They are demanding the scrapping of all 3 laws. Bilkis Bano, the famous Dadi from Shaheen Bagh, was stopped from joining the protests. Meanwhile, transporters have called for nationwide strike in support of farmers. They have threatened the halt of supply of essential goods. Amit Shah has met the agriculture and railway ministers as protests continue. Canada's Justin Trudeau backed farmers' protests. India has said that his remarks are ill-informed. And some journalists also said it's our internal matter, please back off. Twitter flagged BJP's Amit Malviya's tweet as manipulated media. He's the first Indian politician to earn this tag. Great news, Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine have been cleared. UK will get its first shot next week. US has planned to start COVID vaccination within 24 hours of approval. Meanwhile, in India, the centre has rejected volunteers' claims. They've cleared Oxford vaccine trial in India.
And this is regarding a volunteer had said that he felt severely ill. Not ill, but he nervous and all sorts of other things started
Basically,
happening.
the vaccine isn't safe.
Memory loss and all
yeah.
that. Change in behavior also.
So, right.
I think he has filed, he sued also.
Yeah,
no?
5 crore and this one, what's the name of the lab? They have filed a counter suit
Serum
of...
Institute of
Serum has
India.
found a
Institute of
counter suit of 100 crore.
Attorney General K.K. Venugopal has given his consent to initiate contempt proceedings against a cartoonist, very dangerous people, Rachita Taneja. She's the creator of a webcomic called Sanitary Panels.
And then, of course, this was something that I heard yesterday. Humans are waging a suicidal war on nature, says the UN chief Antonio Gutteres. I hope I've got the pronunciation right. And I heard the full speech yesterday, and then he was interviewed on BBC. That was pretty major. And then SC refuses plea seeking action against Andhra CM for his comments against a judge.
Low voter turnout in Hyderabad civic polls. Cyclone Burivi is likely to hit Tamil Nadu on December 4th and Kerala is on red alert. In some sad news, MDH Spices owner Dharampal Gulati has died at the age of 98.
Wow, he was on all these ads, right?
Yeah.
I remember.
In some crazy news, stuff that can only happen in India, 5.25 crore rupees is missing from Statue of Unity's daily collection account. A case has been filed. Modi ji on the holy occasion of Dev Diwali prayed at Kashi Vishwanath temple. That made major headlines across news channels. This was on Tuesday. And in fact, it completely eclipsed the farmers' protest. Donald Trump's H-1B visa rule that hurt Indians has been scrapped by US judge. So, yahoo.
But that day, which was Dev Deepavali, I think that was the same day that coincided with Guru Purab.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, noteworthy that on the day of Guru Purab, there was not that I think anything to be taken away from Dev Deepavali. In the context of the farmers, which was predominantly at that time limited to Punjab farmers, and now, of course, the Haryana, Uttarakhand, Maharashtra joining, that he thought that messaging of, that video that he released. That
visuals were really...
I just thought
crass.
it was tone deaf. I find it
I
phenomenal.
mean, not in the context of Guru Purab. For me, all in all, it was tone deaf. Him tapping his hands to that music while farmers are agitating was just quite...
Shambhu. But so there's lots to discuss. But before we move on, I would just like to appeal to many of you to contribute. Thank you so much for those who topped up our NL Sena for our legal costs. Our hopefully the final hearing is on the 21st, where we are hoping to get the FIR quashed against Pratik Goyal. So those of you who contributed, thank you so much for that. This time it is going to be a physical hearing because now the Bombay High Court has started physical hearings. Meanwhile, we have also received 2 legal notices of, one at least mentions 100 crore. From a very large media house. I will probably make it public if they follow through with it. So I think we have another case coming up. So I may need to reach out again. So you guys can contribute and make sure that we don't get intimidated by these large media houses that are really not doing a public service but selling ad space in exchange for real estate. And when they are called out, they send legal notices to outfits like ours, which probably can fit in one bathroom of one office of the many. But I don't really give a fuck. So I will take my lawyer's advice and hopefully do a takedown of them on video. But let's see if they go to court. On that note, let's start off with the farmers' protest, which has dominated headlines. Nidhi, by the way, fantastic coverage, fantastic reporting. You and Basant have been doing some really good work and we are so proud. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sending us.
Yes. Now, first of all, how do you communicate with those farmers? Because most of them are from the pind. ਤੇ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਬੋਲਦੇ ਪੁੱਤਰ ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਸਰ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਸਮਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਇਹ ਕਹਿ ਕੀ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ so
it's really good. I mean, you asked me to listen to that 45 minutes of video.
Yeah.
what Punjabi, man. But
है ना?
I could understand most of it.
हाँ. So
But it was really good to, listen to such Punjabi. Otherwise, I mean, I find most of the people, when they speak Punjabi, as if they are abusing.
that's right. It's true. Some of the Punjabis of those farmers, that interview you're talking about, it's from a Punjabi channel, and that Punjabi sounds really lovely, but we are so used to Yo-Yo, Honey Singh and Badshah's Punjabi that the real Punjabi is kind of lost somewhere. So Nidhi, seriously, are you having problems in communicating there?
I think this has been an issue throughout my reporting career. I've always had a problem with language, and I'm also always scared while writing a text piece of what gets lost in translation. And I also don't think people understand the difficulty in reporting in a language that you haven't grown up around. But that said, I do think that what's been amazing is most of the people we've spoken to, they do speak Hindi. But once the camera is switched on, they don't want to speak in Hindi. They will only speak in Punjabi. So I understand what they're saying because I've had a off-camera conversation to an extent where I can get a gist of what they're saying. But it's definitely a challenge, and I'm always scared of the nuances that I might possibly be missing out because I don't entirely understand the language.
So before I get into specifics of that, since you have this problem, Nidhi is Mallu, and she grew up in Bangalore and Kerala.
Yeah.
So why don't you ever take up the offer of being stationed out of the south? Each time I've made that offer, you have rejected it.
Yeah, because I started out in Kashmir, and I somehow feel like it's important for me to be in Delhi as much as I shit on the city all the time. Like, I feel like it's important to be near the power structure and be here to really understand how things work. And then maybe I can pan out to the south. But yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to report in the south sometime, just not right now.
Back home, as they say in Kerala, from my native. Where is your native? And why do you think this is that when on camera they want to speak Punjabi only?
They're quite adamant because they feel like, also they feel like Modi has in some way tried to project that this is a very small section of farmers from Punjab who are protesting because they don't understand the law. While this law is made for farmers, they don't have the ability to read it. So it's almost a rebellion in some sorts, where they're saying that you take a look at how small we are in number, because right now we're choking Delhi, and it's going to be an issue for you. So it's sort of a rebellious act that they've decided to speak in Punjabi in large numbers.
It's a bit like Shehla. She was a wonderful colleague who used to work at Newslaundry, who's now moved to Bombay. She wasn't a very conservative or practicing Muslim, but she used to wear a scarf. And when I asked her, she said, actually, I don't really give a damn, but I'm wearing it purely because I feel bullied. So it's to actually underline the point that I wouldn't have ordinarily worn it, but now I will wear it. But right. So, Manisha, you have been following this on media. So before we get some on-ground trivia from Nidhi, how has the regular media been reporting it? I've been seeing actually several videos of how regular news channels have been pushed back on, some politely and some not so politely.
Some quite violently.
Yeah, that was
In
in Chandigarh, right?
an Aaj Tak reporter got beaten up quite badly.
But that was by Congress goons.
Oh yeah, well, they're saying it's the Youth Congress.
I'm not surprised. We remember what they did here to Safdar Hashmi at Mandi House. But is this new? Because I remember there was like all sorts of high slogans, but the complete pushback, like on Sudarshan, on Z, on Aaj Tak,
On Republic.
Why? What has the coverage been like? Because I haven't actually seen the coverage. I've just seen the response to the coverage.
Oh, it's the same thing that they've been doing for a while now. And we've seen this from, I think, CA protests onwards, that essentially what these channels do is they go to these protest sites, they'll find one or two controversial bites and speak to people who are probably not aware of the bill or would, in their excitement, say something, and then just play that on loop to tar the entire protest. So in this case, they found this guy who said Indira thok di, Modi thok diya, and they found some Khalistan posters, and then the whole coverage has been about how Khalistani tattva mil gaye hain, और कैसे खालिस्तान की डिमांड हो रही है, and the farmers' issues are completely, at the back. And I think that's what's happened through every protest. And the backlash is now, for us, it's been a story for a year now. Every protest that we go to cover, our major story is about the anger against the media. So you have protesters chanting slogans against the government, and then the second rung slogans are all anti-media. Z News, Godi Media, Republic, Aaj Tak, and people are naming channels. It's not that they just say, ki media kharab hai. They have specific channels that they watch that they dislike. And I mean, from Nidhi's conversations, and I highly recommend that video that she shot with 4 farmers about what they thought of the media coverage. It's pretty clear that these guys are watching what is being said about them. For example, Sudhir saying that how can farmers speak in English? कि ये अंग्रेजी में कैसे किसान बोल सकते हैं? किसान अंग्रेजी तो नहीं बोलता. Now this guy has watched it clearly. He said that Z News वाले ये बोल रहे हैं, मैं farmer का बेटा हूँ, मैंने convent में पढ़ा है, I'm a farmer, I'll show you my land. I mean, am I not supposed to speak in English just because I'm a farmer's son? So I think the anger is completely legitimate because, they're no longer people who you can just...
Can you imagine these guys who claim to be like not the Lutyens, not the coffee drinking types? The elitism that they have is...
It's like, stunning elitism.
It's stunning.
And I love that conversation precisely because one of the guys says that, why will I not have a good life? Yeah, we are great. We are not going to wear fata kapda and dhoti. We're not going to be like the Tamil Nadu farmers eating rat and with a skull or whatever. We are sampanna. I mean, in the sense we are prosperous and we want to remain prosperous. And what's wrong with that? If an Ambani can lobby to remain rich, why can't farmers from whichever background they come lobby to remain rich or whatever to sustain their way of life?
So it's the most illogical and most stupid of arguments. I mean, if a farmer breaks his back to work hard, what does he work for? To give his children, give his family a better life. I am a farmer's son. My father is still a farmer. Everyone in my family is still a farmer. I go home, whenever I can do a little bit of farming. Precisely.
How do you speak English?
Yeah, jeans क्यों पहनी है आपने? That sort of question.
This is most ridiculous. But this is from the textbook of propaganda. This is exactly what they did during the CA also. There are lakhs of people on the street. So you find 2-3 people. If there are lakhs of people on the street, like in the society, you will have people who will have different ideas. Some of them will be extremists also. Some of them will be unsavory characters also. So you pick up this person and then you try to do the whole thing. The whole argument is about that person.
Yeah.
Like what happened, for example, what was his name? Sharjeel Imam during CAA protests. What the people were demanding, what it was for, nothing. So this guy said something, let's latch on to that and do this. Same thing with this Deep person here during the protest. I saw this one clip yesterday. I think it was a Sudarshan reporter who was asking somebody to prove that he was a farmer to say how you
Aloo kaise
grow
ugta hai?
potato.
And he took off. He says, I'm not a farmer, but I'm here to support the farmer. And he started asking her. She was asking him that how do you grow aloo? He's saying, you're not here to test me whether I know farming or not. He says, have you read the law? And of course, she was a young reporter. She probably doesn't even know the name of the law.
Reporter we can't even call. Representative.
Representative, not a reporter. Representative Sudarshan. He says, have you read the law? He started asking a question and she ignored him and moved on. It's it's disgraceful.
I mean, but you have to do it if you don't have any other argument. I mean, you could just go and sit across the table from the farmers and tell them, okay, let's talk. You have these problems, let's sort them out. But they're not interested in that. I mean, so before they came to Delhi, for 2 months, they were protesting in Punjab.
Yeah,
nobody cared. The central government actually blackmailed them. I mean, they stopped all the trains so that they'll end their protest. That was blackmail. I mean, they practically starved an entire state out of like railway services so that these guys will stop. Once they come here, they don't have an argument. So they start this propaganda.
And that's another
obviously
thing.
The greatest propaganda tool they have is the media. So
that's one thing they say, that we've been protesting for a month. Why has no one in Delhi media picked it up? And then there's a lot of praise for local media.
Right.
I mean, and for Ravish. Yeah,
And in
Ravish
fact,
is really...
I have consumed a lot of Punjabi media in the last 2-3 weeks, and I must say that there is some very good reportage happening,
very good.
Informed reportage happening. And I'm surprised that the English and the Hindi media is so clueless about stuff. Yeah, they can just pick up those people. Yeah, it's anyway.
They're complete lapdogs.
No, this is also because it's not just their propagandists and lapdogs. It's also because they aren't connected with those people.
Right.
The class system these people come from, they have absolutely no idea about. They wouldn't be asking
questions like how
farming.
They speak English.
Exactly. They don't know anything about farming. They don't come from those backgrounds.
Yeah.
The only thing they know about agriculture is to eat.
Right.
Even before these farmers, started marching towards Delhi, I think the line was given to the media which favors the government. The line was given that most of them are Khalistanis.
Yeah.
They have a support of Khalistani. So this I heard even before they started marching to Delhi. So as soon as they hit the Haryana border, the Khalistani propaganda began.
Yeah, but it was pretty clear that there was a theme because Times, Republic, Z, and even IBN. Like IBN has gone completely, they usually, hedge a little bit. CNN IBN. They have not hedged on this. Like I saw Maria Shakil on a panel saying that she's asked the farmer representative, the government is not going to withdraw this. They are not going to budge. Now tell us, what are you going to do?
She said that. I
said,
tell you.
are you a bloody representative of the government? I mean, I understand Ambani owns your channel and you're not, subscriber based like Newslaundry is, because we say pay to keep news free, because otherwise Ambani will buy us all out, including agriculture and everything else. Then you can just go and stand outside Antilla with your katora. But until then, do subscribe to Newslaundry and pay to keep news free. But even the hashtag or the ticker, it was so similar in all cases that it is hard to believe that they don't get a single order from a single place saying that this is what the theme for tonight is going to be. Now, on the ground, Nidhi, do you come across these reporters? What is your experience with them? I mean, are they trying to do honest, fair reportage, or do they avoid you because you're representing Newslaundry? How does it work for you on the ground? Is there a lot of... Because back in the day, at least when I used to roam around with the mic in my hand, of course, there weren't 200 channels. There were maybe 4 or 5 bulletins. There were not even channels back then. But there was a lot of camaraderie among reporters. If someone was giving a bite, we'd actually call everybody. It wasn't पीछे की bathroom की exit से हम मुझे bite दे दो बाकी जाएं पर जाएं. We'd say, okay, he's coming, give bite, everybody come. Is there that, or now everyone's out to hit each other with the mic on the head?
So I think there's now different sections or there are different groups or different cliques. There are TV channel reporters who still hang out together. And I think with print reporters, it's a little more scattered. And especially with us younger reporters, we still don't know the entire network of journalists in India, but in Delhi, sorry. And on ground, when we do tell them that we are from Newslaundry, because a lot of the times we are also sometimes filming reporters covering the protest. And the moment they realize we are from Newslaundry, then they don't want to talk to us or they don't want to be around us. That's there. And that is quite funny because they do stay as away from us as possible. But from what I noticed during the protest, from day one, I'm saying that the day that we were there, which is on 27th, when the farmers arrived in Delhi, there was a huge clash. So it was quite violent. And on that day, the anger was against the security personnel, the anger was against the state. But from the second day onwards, we started hearing this frustration that was building among people against the media. And by the third or fourth day, the articulation became very, very clear, especially as this Khalistani narrative started coming out in the media. And I think one person really put it beautifully to me, and he said, there is a complete erasure of trust. And it's not an impulsive, it's not a sort of sudden anger. This trust was a loss of trust with the state. That began with the bills itself. It was a loss of trust on security personnel, quote unquote security personnel, who lashed out at them so much through the time they have been protesting and making their way to Delhi. And then the media is often the last resort. And then when they also stab you in the back, they sort of feel very isolated. And that sense of isolation was there from the beginning, in the sense that they felt that we've been agitating for 2 months. And this is something that a local reporter told me, that for you Delhi-based reporters, this is a 4 or 5 day agitation now. We've been doing this for 2 months. Some of us have been with the march from wherever they began, from our own hometowns. Our own families are fathers are farmers, and we understand the depth of this issue. And you've come here in 4 days. Certain sections of the national media have turned it into something else altogether. So that erasure of trust is really deep among people right now.
So now there are many aspects to this. I mean, I'm sure we'll have an explainer on this. Wonderful Meghnad will probably be putting out an explainer
working on it,
around the bills. So for the specifics on that, you can come to newslaundry.com and check out. We'll be doing a bunch of reports other than the ones on the protest that Nidhi and Basanta are doing. We will have some...
Oh, sorry. On the bills, we have already done an explainer. Meghnathan's done it.
The earlier one.
Yeah.
So so you can check out that explainer so you can get an idea of the bills. And we'll probably get another few write-ups once, there's an articulation of what exactly the farmers want, and we can have more of an idea on that. But there are many aspects, 2 aspects that I want to discuss before we move on to any of the other issues.
I just want to add that we've actually done an interview now with Balbir Singh Rajewal, where he does really articulate what is it that the farmers are asking for. And the interview should be out by the time the podcast is out.
Oh, great. So hopefully both of those things will be up together. So what's his full name again?
Balbir Singh Rajawal, he is the president of the Bharatiya Kisan Union.
And he was there at the meeting at the Niti Aayog when this entire this thing started rolling, that there'll be some agricultural reforms, and he's given the full account of what happened in those meetings, etc.
Yeah, and he's also been part of the meetings where he met Narendra Singh Tomar on Tuesday, and he will be meeting them today as well.
Great. So we look forward to that. So you did that interview again. You were speaking Hindi and English, and he was speaking Punjabi. How did it work?
Yeah. I know he speaks very good English and Hindi. So in the beginning of the interview itself, I told him that I'll be mixing both. And so I asked my questions in a mix of Hindi and English, and he answers mostly in Hindi.
Okay. But he didn't insist on speaking Punjabi on camera.
No, he didn't.
Right. So the two things that I want to angles that I want to explore on this is, one is the pushback or the support that the farmers have gotten against the government by popular stars of Punjab. Yeah. Whether it is Diljit Dosanjh, whether it's Jazzy B, who had actually retweeted
one of her.
And I remember he had this song called Kamali, Kamali. He has this really bizarre dance. but God bless him for
that. Kudi Gujarat di Kudi is his song only. Who's that?
That was Just Meet or something, I forget. But then Diljit Dosanjh has spoken up, Harbans Maan has spoken up,
Gippy Garewal,
Gurdas Maan has spoken up. Now, what is it? And Raman, so you're from Punjab. I think you have your ancestral land near Khanna village,
near
no?
Hoshiarpur. It's in Hoshiarpur district. The village is called Jejo.
Okay.
It's a beautiful, 3 acre of land. We call it Killa in Punjab. So I was trying to develop it as an orchard. But in February, we had done little work, but March COVID aa gaya. Then we could not do anything.
So now see, your plans of becoming a farmer are being shafted by the universe. But
yes, the land is pretty good.
But now in Punjab, what is it culturally that this pushback has been so immense from popular culture? There's a certain nature of being unafraid. And I think that is a very important theme in, the Sikh tradition and generally in Punjab. Now, Diljit Dosanjh, he has as much to lose as Akshay Kumar. He's trying to make it. In fact, he played second fiddle to Akshay Kumar in that stupid film on pregnancy. He's done 2 or 3, films in Bollywood. All these people, Bollywood is a big market for them. And
their songs, it's a pan-Indian reach with every album they come out.
But yet, they don't think twice before pushing back at Kangana, whereas everyone from Akshay Kumar to the Khans, I can understand that the Khans don't speak up because they'll be called Pakistani or whatever. But what is it that you think makes the Punjab actors, stars and singers unafraid in speaking up against the government? Is it because it is their people and they wouldn't do it ordinarily? They didn't do it on CA? Or is it that don't mess with Punjab? Is it that the cliche of Punjab di matti and apna Punjab and asi Punjabiyan and putt jatande and all that stuff is not just a cliche? That is their biggest, identity more than anything else? What do you think it is, sir?
No, I think farmers is a huge community in Punjab. Okay. Whether it comes to politics or selling your art, selling your songs, farmers is a huge community. So if you had listened to that interview of Balbir Singh in Punjabi, so he was telling that how the Akali Dal tried to lobby with him. Okay, Akali Dal had not withdrawn,
at that time,
support from the BJP. They had not withdrawn it. So they had a meeting with him twice, and when they found that the entire Akali cadre has joined the farmers, this is the time when the Akali withdrew it. And Balbir Singh, he still feels that these people had withdrawn just for the heck of it. They are still with the BJP.
I see. You made a fixed match.
Yes. So the community, but his impact, on Congress, the Congress called the assembly, and they only after speaking to the farmers. So I think farmer as a community is huge. It is as a social group. It's a big pressure group. It's a big market.
And probably in Punjab, everyone has some personal association with farming through family, right?
Yeah, everyone would have.
That is true. And also they are pretty rich. Even in this farmer's family, one member of the family has gone abroad and he has made a lot of money. Okay. and also the land holding is better than other states.
Yes. In fact, I saw the data. The average land holding in Punjab is, I think, close to 5 hectares or acres. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I apologize. It's almost twice of the national average.
Right.
So that was a data point that actually had been said on several of these more informed discussions on this issue.
And also this is the community, and also psychologically speaking, I mean, Punjabis, they do speak their mind out. So they're not afraid of any consequences.
They have that
I
bebak
don't know
kind of.
how true I am, but I have seen it. They speak out their mind.
And they have a funny way of saying things also. Like that really
That is
funny
true.
bite where this guy is saying ki, how can we be Khalistani? We can't handle our own gurdwaras. How can we handle a demand for a country? And we, right now we need a passport to go to Pakistan to the Gurdwara. Would we want a passport to go to Patna Sahib, like the Gurdwaras in India? Like, why would we want that? So it was really funny the way he was saying कि basically हमसे अपना एक गुरुद्वारा तो संभाला नहीं जाता, हम क्या नया country demand करेंगे. It's really funny.
But also, I mean, that isn't even the point. I mean, I'm sure there are people in Punjab who have sympathies with that cause, who have those sentiments. But that is not the issue here. This is something completely different.
And also, I mean, I don't know. This is something maybe Abhinandan would know better because you've traveled there and you were older than I was during 85 and that time. But I know of my friends at least who will not say he's a terrorist. They will say, and these are my Punjabi friends, they won't say he's a hero or whatever. But I don't know of a Punjabi who'd outrightly say that he was a terrorist. There is this, it's kind of like a wound that's been bandaged and everyone gets to live their own reality about this period that there was. But like what Barkha was trying to do with that singer.
Oh, we should discuss that Barkha's interview, right?
That wasn't an interview, that was a lecture.
To get him to say he was a terrorist. And though my father served during Blue Star, so I know, I mean, there were cases of, they were terrorists for all practical purposes. They were. But it's a very interesting thing, why, there's this strange peace. And also, another thing that I was thinking was that when the media demonizes CAA and protesters as India and terrorists, there are a lot of takers among Hindus. But Hindus, middle-class Hindus are not willing to buy Sikhs as terrorists. I mean, they're not willing to view Sikhs or, Punjabis as terrorists, even though there's been the, 80, that whole insurgency, militancy period. I think it's very difficult to drive a wedge between Sikhs and Hindus, and which is why I think this Khalistani plot is not really working too well.
Yeah, I think the whole Hindu-Muslim thing is way more deep-rooted. It's in families deep down. I mean, they will not have an... families like ours, I mean, our generations are all maybe okay, but the earlier generations, they'd be okay, marrying a Sikh, but they won't be okay marrying a Muslim. And that is, of course, and everyone did exactly that. But that's a separate point. But I think that's a given. But what you're talking about, I've written a piece on this actually last year. And I was...
About the
Golden
Temple.
The Golden Temple. That,
Memorials.
where there's a plaque which talks about Bhindra Wale and his, the other terrorists as heroes. And it's there. It is right there under the Akal Takht. The full essay is there. And I've taken photographs and it's part of that piece. In fact, that piece will be linked under this podcast. And I've traveled extensively in Punjab while shooting all the shows we used to do. I mean, I think Punjab and Karnataka are the two most visited states, and Rajasthan, these three, because, of a variety of reasons, we used to, whenever we had no episodes to shoot, we'd go to any of these three. So I've covered it by road. And you're absolutely right. I mean, of course, if you go to Damdami Taksal, which is the English में क्या कहते हैं Taksal को, sir? I guess it translates to a Sikh educational organization. So they have these different Taksals. Like Bhindra Wale was from Damdami Taksal. And so if you go around that area, you will be hard pressed for anyone to condemn Bhindra Wale. And I'm not talking about just a regular person there. As you move further, there will be people who may not call him, while referring to him very casually, they'll refer to him as Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindra Wale. And then you'll say, do you actually think he's Sant?
Sant as in saint. Yeah.
So they'll say, nahin, but they won't call him a terrorist. And in that piece, I've quoted my chats with my taxi drivers. And at the same time, in the Golden Temple, there exists all these other plaques which are saluting all the soldiers who lost their lives while fighting these very people. And within a few yards of each other. So it's very interesting.
And you have so many in Punjab who joined the army. I mean, it has also a huge tradition of, the Sikh regiment and all that.
And of course, we didn't have free media at the time. I mean, the fact is that if you read a book like Mark Tully and Satish Jacobs' Amritsar, Mrs. Gandhi's Last Battle, or even General Brar's Operation Blue Star, or There are a whole bunch of books have been written on this. There were Fauji little, platoons, okay, maybe not a battalion, but groups of Sikhs who had taken over the 3 tons and they had started driving towards Amritsar. Of course, it didn't become news because it would just, if the country knew that they're actually...
pretty much mutiny, yeah.
It's mutiny and that could spread. But there were soldiers who did that. They took over and they heard that, tanks have entered the Golden Temple. So Barkha's interview, I think Barkha, because she has been such a big name and has been like the superstar, when you become a superstar, you want maximum acceptance. And maximum acceptance comes from whatever is the dominant narrative, no matter how flawed it may be. So I think in that interview, while she keeps trying to get Deep Singh to condemn Bhindranwale, it had nothing to do with the interview. It's about the farmers' protest. Like whether he condemns him as terrorist or not, what is it to any, like if I am today, if I get Modi or anyone, will I say condemn Nathuram Godse? Why have you given a ticket to her? That will not be the sum of the interview.
You can still ask because he is the Prime Minister.
Yeah,
he has power. This is just an ordinary person.
Plus, you're giving Hawa to the notion that there's a Khalistani element to this protest when there isn't.
And also the thing that after that she tweeted that I'm sorry, Justin Trudeau has no business. So I think the thing is that you want to show that while I'll be fair, these are the odd chances you get to prove your credentials as a nationalist. So you take that chance, even if it's the cost of a guy who doesn't have to condemn Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale to talk on the farmers. The two are not connected. I think that was bad journalism. And Barkha has 100 other flaws. She doesn't do bad journalism very often. I know she did in Kashmir, and I agree with you on that. But otherwise, she's one of the better ones. So I was very disappointed.
But I think there's more to it than that.
Even if they're speaking about justice, this Canadian Prime Minister, if he has said something, I think they will make it part of the Khalistani narrative. So because most of the Khalistani supporters, as people believe, they live in Canada.
Yeah. So just so I'm sure, she tweeted, I have said this before in the context of my Deep Sidhu interview, and I'm saying it again in context of Trudeau. These sort of ill-thought interventions hurt the cause of our brave farmers. Trudeau is playing to domestic politics in Canada. It's really none of his business. Now, like you have to tweet this out. No one's asking ki Barkha ji, aapka kya view hai is par? But bhai, let me put my view out there taki I have one tick mark. So tomorrow if I'm accused of this, I can use this as a get out of jail card. I just find this very cowardly.
I think, I think it was Nelson Mandela who put it like very beautifully explained it. This is more than that. She is trying to prove her credentials and all that, but this is kind of a malaise of the liberal elite all over the world. They expect that their enemies should be your enemies too. It's like the same when, for example, the American elite wants you to condemn Iran and Cuba and everybody else. But they'll be like Barkha, for example. Nobody should, or Veer Sanghvi, for example. Modi is a mass murderer, but he's our mass murderer. He actually wrote that. But he has a problem with Justice Trudeau.
He wrote that?
Yeah, in a column long back. But if Trudeau says something, no, don't go there. It's the same thing with it. For example, if the person had asked Barkha that condemn Modi, condemn Advani, condemn everybody else,
they wouldn't.
Exactly.
So Taksal is a seminary, just saying, I was wondering. So it is the equivalent of a seminary. So now Nidhi, this whole Khalistan narrative, I don't want this conversation to be about that, but did any farmers point out to you, or did you see any journalists asking them questions about this and the farmers saying, don't ask us about this is none of your business? Or was in front of you, none of the reporters are going down this road?
So regarding reporters, I didn't particularly see any reporters asking this, although we've seen clips of it now, and it is a really long stretch, so we could have missed out a lot of things. But personally, I never heard the word Khalistan come out from a farmer's mouth, which is why it was also really surprising when this became a media narrative that there wasn't anybody speaking of Bhindranwale, there wasn't anybody speaking of Khalistan. And then the question, they would only respond to it when we asked them, what do you think about this media narrative? And once again, it was beautifully articulated to us that if you ask us this question, are we not supposed to respond? Should we not even say the word Khalistan? And they said the problem is that we can talk to you about it, you might listen, but somebody else, another Z News reporter or Aaj Tak reporter will come, they will edit that question out and they will only play that we have spoken about Khalistan. You will never hear them talk about Khalistan as a discussion to the media by themselves unless you ask them that question. So this whole, even about Deep Sidhu, I never heard, like we also yesterday asked them a little bit, like, did you happen to watch that interview or what do you think of him? Now, he is not any Kisan Sabha leader. He's there to show his solidarity. He happened to go viral with that one video and he said what he said. I mean, it's irrelevant to us. That's irrelevant to the cause. So they said, I don't even think we have an opinion on it because it doesn't even matter to this movement.
And just logistically on the ground, how many people are there? How long is the stretch? Just tell those of us who know Delhi well, if you could just describe how are they dealing with the food? Where are they sleeping? Because this is way bigger than the Jan Lokpal movement at Jantar Mantar and Ramleela Maidan. But we would get whatever 100 mattresses and the tambu and all, which was more often than not supplied by Shri Shri Ravi Shankar. I mean, I don't think it's any secret, but there were a lot of people who today Aam Aadmi Party may not agree with, who did contribute at that time, including, members of the Communist Party and stuff. So you take everyone's support.
Yogendra Yadav, of course.
Yogendra Yadav is everywhere. Oh, we have to discuss that angle also. But so just describe on ground, how wide is it? Where is the food? Where are people going for their, as we say in India, fresh hone kahan jate hain wo? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, so one thing is very clear, that it's not a spontaneous movement. They know that they're in this for the long haul. So they've come extremely well prepared. I must add that Basant and I have only been going to the Singhu border. Now, there are other borders also where the farmers are. So at Singhu border, it's a massive stretch of about 5 to 6 kilometers, where as far as we could tell, it was 5 to 6 kilometers. So there were people also telling it's 10 kilometers, it's 12 kilometers. But for us, Ramadeep Man, who's an activist and has been working in coordinating these protests, he confirmed to us that this is about 5 to 6 kilometers roughly, and there are still farmers coming in. So it's hard to put a count on the people, but he said there is at least 3,000 people at this protest right now. And regarding food, so on the first day, it was a little more scattered. Everybody had rations with them. So by evening, they started setting up with bricks, and they would burn cow dung cakes, and they would start setting up little kitchens, and people would start crowding around. But yesterday, we started realizing that it became a little more organized, that they would have 3 or 4 specific places where all the people cooking would come together. So you would see discussions happening in the morning. There's a stage set up in the front where there's a lot of political conversations. There's a lot of leaders coming on stage and talking about what's in the agenda today, what kind of conversations are happening. And one thing I realized, there's absolutely no compromise on food. There's a good breakfast, there's aloo paratha, there's all kinds of paratha, there's chai at 11.
It's not the Anna type Andolan, where while Anna is sitting there starving, those of us at the back who wanted
In
food.
fact, they were feeding...
I think this Muruthul Dhabas also...
Yeah, Amrik Dhaba gave free food, correct.
But that was one thing, like covering this protest has been amazing because of that, because absolutely no compromise on food. Like 4 baje you'll get chai and snacks, and there'll be a variety of bread pakoda, onion pakoda, paneer pakoda. There's different kinds of things, and they've come very well prepared. And also locals around. So we were having a chai at a shop nearby, and there was a woman who runs the shop on the highway, and she said that it's really nice for us also because we've stopped cooking at home. So we also go to the community kitchens and we also eat there, and also we're getting our medicines because there are free clinics that are being set up, health clinics being set up.
See, this is why the Sikhs have so much goodwill in the country. Wherever they go, they're so organized. Free food, langar, and that seva bhav thing.
Hospitality,
So which is why,
nobody beats them.
It's very
and
tough
also,
to dislike.
It should be surprising. They are the people who are feeding the rest of the country. They should get to eat well
Exactly.
to begin with.
And this whole, the langar thing, no matter where it was, even during the CA protests, what are they, Sikhs for India? What are they called? The Sikhs for India? The guys who
set up langars.
They also
set up
came
langar.
at Shaheen Bagh
United
also.
Sikhs for India.
Shaheen Bagh, they came. Wherever it happens, they land up.
Earthquakes, even at the Kedarnath flood, that time I remember there were Sikhs, distributing food and helping people out.
And as Hartosh had pointed out over here, I remember I was saying that, while the RSS has so much of goodwill also, is because they did a lot of work during the Bhuj earthquake or during the partition. What the government couldn't do, they went. So because of that goodwill, they get a lot of political capital. So Hartosh said that is nonsense. It is by engineered demand because the Sikhs have been feeding so many people for so long. Yet they have no political capital. They only have general social goodwill, which is a good point.
But they have a huge social goodwill. That's which is why I was saying that I don't think an average Hindu, even a Sanghi Hindu, is willing to buy this Khalistani narrative or look at Sikhs in the same suspicious way that
Well, it depends, because now the Modi Bhakti has got to a level where people like Vivek Agnihotri and Kangana, who are rewarded by the government with positions and posts and favoritism, like the kind of stuff he's saying about the farmers, same thing, the English speaking farmers, like just because you could not quite learn English, and that is a huge point of it's a complex that has made you into a very hateful person, and you hate anyone who comes from that background, doesn't mean everybody can't. Like, he's tweeting the kind of discrediting that is being attempted on anyone who speaks against this. But now I saw a report this morning, there are a bunch of Maharashtra farmers have set off from Maharashtra with tractors full of food who are going to come here. Now from Maharashtra to here is a long drive. I don't know whether they'll make it. I'm sure the government is going to make sure to do all they can to stop them from coming. But before we wind up, this whole who represents the farmer? Yogendra Yadav on a lot of panels. And an article has come on that, right, Manisha?
Yeah, there's an article in the Caravan which is really a very interesting read. It's a report, no suggestions or no like essays on it, but it basically shows how Yogendra Yadav actually shows him in really like comical light, because he's like this guy who's just hanging around the cool crowd to get some cred, essentially. And the article is basically about how he was telling the farmers that we should move into Delhi and go to the designated ground, because हमारा मकसद तो था दिल्ली में आना, और हमें दिल्ली में जाना है तो हम successful हो जाएंगे. So one of the farmers in the meetings shoots back and says that how many farmers have you, Yogendra Yadav, got on a tractor? You don't even have like 5 carders. Why should we be listening to you? And it's very interesting because Yogendra Yadav's press releases that have come out, seem to suggest that he has done this huge sacrifice by not meeting the center. मतलब मैंने त्याग कर दिया है to not represent the farmers क्योंकि Amit Shah doesn't want to meet me. But when you listen to the farmers' quotes, it's mostly that center didn't want him and it's between them. Like, we don't care. He's a political party. It's not, we have a different issue altogether. Our representatives are different. And I think this is good that one of the mistakes I think that happened during CAA was people were able to hijack that very easily. Different people could just come on the stage and just claim to be speaking for Muslims. Liberals also would come and say, Yogendra Yadav se leke jo bhi, any kid from JNU Jamia could come up and claim that. It's good that the farmers have said here that we have 35 people who will represent us and we will talk for ourselves. We don't need Delhi.
Their main problem, I think, was that he wanted them to move to that ground.
Burari ground.
Burari ground.
But why? Like, what a random suggestion to give also.
I find it fascinating how Yogendra Yadav comes and wants to play Bhishma Pitama to every army. Dude, aap kaun? Like, thank you for coming. आप वहाँ कोने में बैठ के लंगर खाइए. We'll come to you. Get in line. Sorry, sir, you were saying something?
No, I was saying that this movement has identified, 35 Kisan unions, and representative of these 35 Kisan unions, all of them are, part of the negotiation. So in which, of course, Yogendra Yadav doesn't figure at all.
Yeah, Nidhi, you were saying?
I was just saying that we witnessed something interesting yesterday where Yogendra Yadav was being interviewed by a local Punjabi reporter, and he started playing up this narrative. So he also, in an interview with us, told us that this is a big democratic victory. And he says that, farmers should move to the ground. And immediately a farmer walked in and he said, how are you saying this and who are you to say this? Like, two very important questions. He immediately asked Yogendra Yadav, and the reporter was a little hassled because he seemed to also be very close to Yogendra Yadav. And then he said, should I take this question or not? And Yogendra Yadav said, okay, you can go ahead. And so the farmer says, this is, first of all, our protest and you have come here. How are you saying it's a victory? Don't you think that if we go sit there, it's just us going to be sitting there? And also it's a joke because the Burari grounds is like 6 or about 7 kilometers away from the protest area.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's basically, you will have subjected them to one corner and wahan sado maro jo bhi. So, I think
this goes back to the Shaheen Bagh argument. Like, when the judgment was passed that, you should go to a ground and protest and not on the road. What is the point? Because they're here. They've made all their way from Punjab to here and from the different parts that they're coming because they haven't been heard.
And in fact,
they push them to a corner.
No, and one of the farmers said that. He said, we are not blocking the road. You let us go to Jantar Mantar. We'll go there and sit. We want to be
Yeah.
somewhere where we are heard, because they know that the Annar circus has shown them that once your circus has prime location, then dude, it is a question of time before everybody comes there. So they wanted to, so they have blocked the road and not them. And now this is something, and we should call it out, whether, you're liberal, conservative, right, left. People like, what's his name, Yogendra, are a media creation. And, I have been accused of many of your wonderful subscribers that just because I was more friendly with Arvind and I'm that camp, I used to make fun of him and discredit him on the show when that entire split happened. But people like Yogendra are what they are because of access to reporters in Delhi.
Yeah.
Like when he quit AAP, how many people quit with him? Yeah? If he was saying that it's undemocratic and, Arvind takes all the decisions himself and me and Prashant are going, okay, they went. What did they do? Did even like a dozen people leave with them? So what democracy were they representing? Who were they representing in the party? The point is, people like Yogendra, who are very well spoken, they're very polite, they make great panels, are products of lazy journalism. I need someone, let me put him on a panel. He seems like a nice, Jhola type farmer. He can pass off as a farmer representative because I have to work a little harder to get a farmer representative.
Exactly. Like
It's
in this
actually
case,
a very
why
big problem, yeah.
why does a Yogendra Yadav get to be part of a panel when you have these guys?
It's the same thing. I mean, even when you have to, for example, bring Muslim representatives, quote unquote, either if your narrative is you have to demonize them, so you get these illiterate
The Maulanas.
Maulanas, that they are not even Maulanas. I mean, they're just people they pick up. And if it's the other side, for example, who have to get a representative, it's usually people like Javed Akhtar,
Yeah, exactly.
who's a
Yeah.
self-described atheist.
Yeah, and who are on the speed dial of all the reporters, and they'll come
Yeah.
I
absolutely.
mean, you see the op-ed pages of newspapers. It's the same people. Since I have, started reading, I've seen the same people writing. There's never a fresh voice. Same on TV.
I mean,
everywhere.
yours truly has sat on the Times Now panel and given you gyan on how the government should fight the economic slowdown that'll be the outcome of the pandemic. There was me, there was Dr. Anand Ranganathan. They were all of us economists, because they had our number and we had nothing to do. I went and payload gyan that I listened to on NPR Planet Money, and I got 5,000 rupees for it, which, by the way, came into Newslaundry to fund, I think totally from my appearances on Times Now, got some 66,000 bucks, and that funded about probably subscriptions for about 5,000 people for a month or so, I guess.
In fact, that caravan piece is precisely like shows this, because here's a meeting where his offer has been rejected, his ideas have been rejected, and then he's outside and there's a bite that he's giving to the media person is asking him कि क्या decide हुआ, and he's like हमने decide करा है कि हम यहाँ से नहीं move करेंगे.
हम being who?
But हम तो नहीं, आपका reject हुआ है idea वहाँ पे.
While we are recording this, Prakash Singh Badal, the former Chief Minister of Punjab and the Akali Dal, the grand old man of the Akali Dal, has returned his Padma Vibhushan award as a protest for what's happening to the farmers. So clearly,
now they'll start the award wapsi, that thing.
award वापसी gang आ गए. But now अब तो award वापसी पहले आपकी team का था. He was your closest ally. So I mean, of
I
course.
just wanted to add.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add that whether it's regard to the media or whether it's regard to the government, one thing that they are very, very angry about is one, of course, the bills itself, but the other aspect is how the framing of the narrative by the center, the media, and the politicians around the necessity for these laws. Like the center has constantly, whether it's the Prime Minister or the Agriculture Minister, has constantly been saying that this is a pro-farmer bill. It may or may not be, which is a different discussion, but the center's press statements, including parts of the media and some of the politicians who've been stating that this is a pro-farmer bill, and they're extremely upset with this. So one of the things that even Rajawal says in our interview is that we never asked for any sort of benefits. We didn't ask for a bill. So why is this being pushed as something for us? He's saying, call it what it is. Call it something as a pro-corporate bill, corporate law, and then we can take the discussion forward. So this narrativization is also something that they're extremely, extremely angry about, and they feel that they're being talked down to, because a lot of the times, like I recently also saw that the Prime Minister had said that they're protesting because they don't understand how good the law is for them.
Because
And
they haven't
that's not
studied
true at all.
They haven't studied entire political science. They did not use a digital camera before one was invented. They did not use radar at a cloudy night and manage to outwit aircraft. They haven't done all these scientific things, so they don't understand. You see, the farmers are not.
And essentially what the government is saying, you don't understand it because we speak different languages, and I don't mean literal languages, but the way of engaging with politics or governance is different. So you don't understand governance, just take this as something that's good for you. And this is not something that they are willing to do, because firstly, they're offended by it, and secondly, they actually can speak that language. They are educated and they do know how to engage with politicians in their own language.
In fact, I think this is a very important point, because whatever I've been reading at the Indian Express, and I follow Harish Damodaran's bylines, it is true that not all bills, there's just one bill, which is the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Act, which is problematic, which is what the bone of contention is. The other two bills are not really terrible. I mean, that's a separate discussion and all. But the point here is that I think this is also about farmers losing their importance as a force, as a political force, and laws being enacted without consultation. That you are not consulting us for something that will affect us.
Talk about digital media, the laws that have been prescribed.
So
this isn't also
good, bad laws is, of course, can be discussed, and there are different views to it. But the bulldozing is what seems to have upset people quite a bit.
This is very disingenuous also to say that farmers don't understand laws because they're not educated or whatever. This isn't even a question of education. You know this is a law. You have been working all your life on that farm. You know how it's going to affect you.
Yeah.
You know how it's going to decide the rates of fertilizer, of your machinery, of the labor input, of the mandi. You know all that. So you don't need a lecture on it and explainer to make you understand.
There is no substitute to experience. And those of us who have witnessed, whenever I do an interview for any job, I ask a person to list the following: experience, intelligence, hard work, being organized, in order of importance. All the youngsters list experiences last. Whereas in life, it is the number one most important thing to negotiate any situation. And this whole thing of talking down was something that was actually, I've mentioned it before on the Hafta, when I was traveling the Northeast. When they said that there should be local self-governance, the funds should not be tied funds. Funds are tied to schemes. So in many of these small towns in the Northeast, Arunachal, Nagaland, we used to get that we want a cinema here, a theatre here. And this is in parts where they're not that prosperous. You don't see the kind of UP, Bihar poverty there, but it's still pretty hard. I mean, there are parts of the Northeast which are really, really been left behind. And typically someone sitting in the center, the planning commission and all, will not say, okay, now we will outlay this much to build cinemas or marriage halls or something in the village. They will have some fairly drain. I mean, that will be way down in the importance list. But there it is because it's just large towns, Kohima or Tawang or Dirang, all these places have something. So our youth go there. And because the roads aren't that good, and the Northeast it's still like the forests and the roads, the amount of people who die of accidents on the road coming back because the mist is so heavy. They said, we will save so many of our youth if you could just put up something they can entertain themselves here. They can play the guitar because there's a lot of music there. Now, this is not something someone sitting in Delhi would prioritize. We will always prioritize, पहले वहाँ नालियाँ बनाओ, फिर वहाँ infrastructure बनाओ, पहले no one will say वहाँ एक hall बना दो ताकि entertain हो जाए लोग. But वहाँ, this was a theme that it was amazing, the amount of small villages and towns that actually said the same thing. That if we just had a place that we keep our youngsters here so they don't go anywhere and really kill themselves while coming back. Because they're coming back drunk and all that.
I also think that to cover such a protest, it also seems important to understand where they're coming from emotionally, because it's this erasure of trust and fear. Like, a lot of people are questioning and saying that it's not that they're saying they will remove MSP. It's not that they're saying they will remove APMC mandis. They're just saying that there'll be an alternate model. So what really is the problem? But the problem is that there is a complete lack of trust on the system. They're saying that you don't understand the relationship. It may not be a foolproof system, but you don't understand the relationship that we do share with the middleman. It's not just a very official relationship. They help us transport the produce sometimes. They help us clean the produce. They help us take it to the market. And what happens to all that? Like, are we going to now have to do all of that? And what's going to happen to that relationship that we share with them? So it's a very deep-rooted fear of the system slowly taking away their relationships, the way they engage. So it's not just about removing the mandi or saying that legalize MSP for no reason at all.
And then when you have this fear already, and then you see the government's reaction, where your Malviyas of the world are maligning you on Twitter, saying, putting out manipulated videos. You see your media calling you Khalistani. You're being dubbed a terrorist. So, that aggravates the whole situation. It's not like the government is saying, okay, you are scared about this. Let's sit down. Let us put our position to you. You put your position to us. You're khodoing gaddas ki wo aana paye. You're hosing them with water cannon, hitting old men. There's no reason for them to trust you.
And they're even saying that you have a Supreme Court Chief Justice who's now in Rajya Sabha. So how are we even supposed to take the
Every
matter
institute,
to court?
there's been an institutional takeover.
And this is this point about trust, what Nidhi said, and you also pointed out in the context of the Northeast. This is one thing that is never captured by policymakers who are usually in Delhi. For example, back home, our sort of apple trade, it's entirely dependent on trust. This is the season, it just ended, September to November season. You sell all your apple in mandis, Sopur, Delhi, everywhere else. You don't get money. You'll get money in, say, March, April, most of it. And most of those people, they're from, say, Bengal or somewhere in Dehradun or somewhere else. You don't even know them. They just come, they take the money, but you trust and you get the money later. So this is not a middleman who you can go to tomorrow and locate and everything. This is all based on trust.
And I think people would rather trust them than any large corporate house or a government shop even.
Because you also lose negotiation power. Like there's a certain language and communication system in which they've been negotiating. They're saying, how do we don't have the negotiation power to negotiate with a corporate. Like what if they start using jargons and a different...
And at least from that interview of the gentleman who you also interviewed, what happened in the Niti Aayog meeting, it is clear that all these corporate houses, when they come and they deal with them, they don't deal with them as equals in any case.
Yeah.
So you were saying something?
No, as Nidhi said, they prefer their own middlemen to two middlemen in this corporate, Adani and Ambani. So they prefer their own middlemen. Besides that, they feel that if they corporatize the entire thing, all corporate groups, they have a scheme. They have huge budget for 3 years or 4 years, and they do not mind, going into losses. The idea is to monopolize. These two corporate groups are going to monopolize everything. So that is why there's a huge lack of trust.
And rather than the narrative being about removing the middleman, because see, if the middleman becomes a part of the organization through backward integration, those of you who've done MBAs and are economic students would know what backward forward integration is. But those of you who aren't would know that Reliance is their entire economic philosophy has been backward integration. So they make polymers. So what polymers are an outcome of the oil business. So then let's just make an oil refinery. So you backward integrate into that, or you forward integrate, into petrol pumps. Then from that from setting up a nature's basket. So when you integrate the middleman into your corporation, you haven't done away with the middleman. He has just become a part of your corporation, but he still exists. He exists and the margins will still be there. It's just that he's not a separate entity, so he won't be called a middleman.
And worse still, he'll have more power now that he is
because
part of a big corporation. Yeah.
So I think this is a myth which many economists have bust in various papers, that this removal of middleman is very context specific. If it is a part of a backward integration of a business, then you haven't removed the middleman, you have integrated him into your team and into your entity. So it's a little more complicated
it depends
than the
on
simplicity.
where this thing lies, where the power lies. Say back home, like I said, in the apple trade, so you have a farmer or you have a grower who will go to the mandi and sell it to what we call commissioning agents. They are also farmers, but they're sort of bigger farmers, and then they sell it forward to Delhi or wherever. So this farmer and this commissioning agent most likely will be from the same village. They might be even related. They might be neighbors. So they have that trust. They know what is a suitable rate. They operate on that level. So it's not like there's this Sarkari official sitting in between. He's the middleman and he's this crook. It's not always like that. So it's context specific, like you said.
Yeah, because one thing they're also very upset about is how the government has been misleading people. Like one is to say that it's a pro-farmer bill, and they also said that you're trying to project this as a one nation, one market system. But they say, I'm sorry, that was there from before itself. We already had a free movement of our produce across the country. So you can't say that now suddenly you're opening something up, because you're not. And the one thing that they do know is the government at this point of time is definitely talking a lot more to corporates than to farmers. So you're saying you don't understand our fears. You're saying this is for us, while all this is a pro-corporate bill.
Right. So we shall check out our explainer on this. Hopefully we'll have some more policy papers on this going forward. I just want to say that while we've been recording this, the news has also broken that Rajinikanth has said that he will announce a party on December 31st and the party will be launched in January. After hemming and hawing.
वाले दिन ही क्यों यार बेचारे reporters?
No, after hemming and hawing for the longest time, because day before yesterday he was supposed to launch it. And again, he waited and everybody waited and it was like live wall-to-wall coverage on some channels. And then he said, I will decide later. So it was, I think he's kind of overplaying his hand. I generally don't believe he has anything of value to add to the political discourse of Tamil Nadu. I don't know what his motivations are. I mean, I have no idea how effective he'll be, but I don't know whether he'll join Kamal Hassan or not either.
How did his thing work out? I mean, it hasn't had much of a, from what I have read.
No, not this thing. But then Rajinikanth is more of a massy guy, so he may have more.
Rajinikanth is more like a Jayalalitha or.
Yeah, he could take that one Dravidian leader that is now lacking there. He could maybe fill like that stalwart, like Karunanidhi and Jayalalitha types.
The forum is called the Rajni Makkal Mandram, but the political party, I don't know what that'll be called. So anyway, we are yet to see.
New Year party.
You have any views on this, Nidhi?
I don't think I can comment on it, no.
Okay, fine. So, well, all the North Indians have commented freely. The one closer to Tamil Nadu has decided to, but that's good. That's fine. So yeah, maybe next week we'll talk about this. No, not next week. We'll talk about this in Jan when he launches it. The other thing that I really wanted to discuss, we have, a bunch of things, but I think this is a very important one. How many saw this guy's speech here? The UN chief, Antonio, what's his surname?
Gutteres. I didn't, but I read it after you spoke about it, and it's quite. But why are you impressed by it? Is it like the first time someone's so harshly spoken about climate change at UN? Or
well, I was just because I think one is because the kind of coverage it got on international channels, and I guess I get influenced by them saying it's a big deal, so I'm saying it's a big deal. Maybe I have no real reason to say it's a big deal, but some of the data points, like for example, I didn't know that between Russia, USA, China and India, 55% of greenhouse gases are just 4 of us.
Yeah.
With China being 28%, we being 7%, USA being 15% and Russia being 5%. And the rest of the world is 45%. Now, we have not signed on that we are going to commit by 2050 reduce, but China apparently has committed to some 2060 or 2050. But basically, I think also in context, they were showing 2 news pieces together. One is his, and some report has come out recently of some scientists saying that I think this year the global warming has been a little less, although the last 10 years it's been significant. And if we can continue to kind of take it down,
really?
We can, I mean...
Definitely would have something to do with lockdown, I guess, because the air travel shutting, factories shutting.
I'm sure it would have a lot to do with
lockdown. And India, mein to kitna drastic bhi shut down.
There was a report I read some time ago saying that if we don't take action right now, in another 10 years, we'll be beyond the tipping point. So there's no way back from there.
Then you can't come back from
there. And thankfully, I mean, this became a huge issue during the primary contests in the US when the Democratic presidential primary was happening, and they were talking about this Green New Deal, fixing the environment, all that. But once Bernie went out of the race, so it all fell out because the people who have come to power now are on the same like fossil fuel fracking bandwagon. So I don't really have much hope that there's anything is going to happen.
But I mean, I still think that this Bolsonaro, apparently in his tenure, the Amazon, the biggest part of the Amazon rainforest in Brazil, it's some 4,000
in 12 years most deforestation has happened
this year because he's like defunded all the agencies that actually fine and to increase. Like, America is such a huge country and they're so efficient at everything. I've always wondered, why can't they just create a huge forest in all these lands that they have here?
But it isn't just about creating the forest. I mean, if you continue to burn fossil fuels, you continue to do fracking, you continue to not arrest climate change through other ways, you don't control emissions. I mean, just planting forests isn't a solution. It's a good thing to do, but it isn't a solution to climate change.
Right.
And plus, there's a lot of money in it. I mean, in doing it and in not doing it also. I mean, because they're cutting down the Amazon forest because they're growing soya and all the other commercial crops. Same way they're like fracking and fossil fuel. They don't want to ease them out because there's a huge lot of money in it. A lot of big corporations make a lot of money and they donate to politicians and stuff. So it's a kind of a vicious circle.
Okay, so two things I quickly want to talk about before I move on to the letters. And we have, as you've noticed, since the last few haftas, kept the letters at the end because some of our subscribers said we should keep letters as part of the hafta. Some of you said that you don't want letters as part of the hafta. So as a compromise, they are at the end, and because now our podcast player allows you to skip subjects and only go to the subject you want. If you don't like the letter bit, you can just skip that bit. So before I come to that, I wanted to discuss two things very quickly. One is the entire Twitter's tagging noteworthy as Amit Malviya, who is the IT head, right, of the BJP.
IT cell head.
BJP social media.
Is it
IT cell.
social media or IT cell, which is
Information technology.
Information
so
technology.
overall IT cell? Okay. The head of that, one of his tweets has been marked as manipulated media. Trump, to now his Twitter timeline only is tagged. There is no normal tweet on his Twitter timeline. What effect that will have on the relationship between the government and Twitter will be interesting to see. And the second thing I want to quickly talk about is the vaccine. And I've been asking this every week, who all are taking the vaccine, who all are not. So I'm going to repeat that. But first about the Twitter. First tell us what exactly the Mamla is, Manisha, and then we can get the panel's comments on that.
The Mamla is that he's tweeted a video which shows that the police hasn't hit this gentleman, but it's an edited video. And that gentleman in later videos has talked about, he's shown his bruises and all that. And it's a viral picture actually that went. And Alt News and all pointed out that the video that he's showing is edited, which shows that the police baton didn't touch the guy. But that was edited. And so he got this manipulated media tagged to his tweet. And he's the first Indian politician to get that. Before that, Twitter has been Twitter, Facebook, all these tech giants are very careful in India to not ruffle the feathers of the BJP.
So what do you think it is? Do you think Twitter's grown a spine, or they've said, okay, let's just have it out because we are too important, they can't possibly shut us down?
Also, I'd like to know the process of deciding this, we're going to accord this tweet manipulated media tag. There should be transparency on how they came to a decision on this and what is the process, because there is a lot of manipulated media all over the internet. So how are they going to decide, and what are the ways in which they come to a decision on this is something I'd like to know. Otherwise, then it's a tricky thing to do, I think.
it's a really big problem. They shouldn't be doing this. As important as it is to curb disinformation and all that lies and everything, people like corporations like Twitter and Facebook, they shouldn't have the power to censor speech like that or decide what is allowed and what isn't. They have been tagging Trump non-stop. They just started with Amit Malviya. He has been doing a lot worse before that. They haven't done it. I'm sure they won't ever do the same thing to Modi, ever.
Yeah, there is bound to be, because there's no clear transparent system in place.
Yeah, and this not just that. I have seen a lot of these socialist left accounts and websites on this thing they have taken down, and they have been almost purged all the pro-Palestinian these websites and this thing on flimsy grounds. They just in UK also, these leftists, they have purged out of Facebook and this thing Twitter. So once you give them that power, and they'll always use it in support of power. They'll always use it on the side of power. They're never going to stand up for the common man.
What do you think, sir?
Don't you think it is really too late? Twitter reacting to.
We
have been seeing these. We so often we see these. The fake news spread by these politicians. So many of them. I don't know why they have reacted now.
So much could be a manipulated media when it comes to a video, because video editing happens. Even they can tag nuisance the same manipulated video. It's not the original, whatever. So, I'm also a bit underconfident about this.
What do you think, Nidhi?
Yeah, I think it's like what Mehraj said, that it's impossible to really surf through everything and see who, and it becomes relative, right? Who's offending whom, and there should be some sort of clear guidelines on this. Otherwise, it doesn't seem to make sense to flag one person and one day.
It's a matter of accountability. A faceless Facebook official shouldn't have the power to decide what you are saying, whether he should tag it or not tag it.
I don't have such a firm position. I guess it'll evolve over time, but I definitely am leaned more towards that they have to tag stuff. In fact, I have often suggested this as one of the solutions to fighting fake news and all these conferences and seminars that I used to attend, that I used to be invited to and fly all over the world, which has just come to a standstill. But one of the solutions was that you have like a red flag against a habitual offender of fake news. So that when I share like a Newslaundry piece, people know that this is like got 3 green flags. There's a credibility. Now, who will those green flags? That will be given by a WhatsApp or a Facebook or a Twitter only, na? And let's say in Open India, they should have 3 red flags because, in like 1 month, they'll come up with at least 3 fake news, if not more. So, according to me, that is a solution. Now, that power will be with humans. I don't think you can give it to a machine. And those humans have to be trained, and you have to come to like an AG mark or an ISI mark. What food is worthy of eating is also we give someone the power to decide. Na? Now, understood that there are corporations and large interests, and there are large companies, who can influence that. By it's taken so long for, McDonald's to be called out for how unhealthy the food is. So now they have to have a calorie count. You have to have a sugar that has, Coke apparently now has to put in some countries that this is excessive sugar content and stuff. But what is worthy to consume, because it damages you, we did give the power to governments.
Well, that's the difference.
And institutions, I understand governments are accountable, they can be voted in and out. But there were organizations which are autonomous organizations. Like a government does not day-to-day run, whatever is the regulatory body that decides. Now, in today's day and age, I would say in many parts of the world, a corporation or a government is as credible as the other, at least in India. In India, if we get money from, let's say, Omadiyar network, okay, we don't get as a regular, that was an investment. But till date, I have not got a call from any Omadiyar network saying that drop this story or don't do this, right? But if I get money from the Modi government, I can assure you I will get that call. So, I am not one to blindly say that, governments are more trustworthy. But anyway, that's a separate issue. Someone has to have that power. Now, who has that power and how you evolve it and what is the mechanism around deciding what is to be flagged and what is not, I think is going to be something that we'll have to invent as we go along. And social media and evolutionary process is a very recent thing. But I am definitely not in favor. And I'm not saying take it down, but mark it. Ki bhai, dekho, ye banda dangerous hai.
But then there's also like a dangerous line between what are not facts and what are offensive, right?
Absolutely. No. So what I'm saying is that line is going to be negotiated. There will be, but I definitely don't think
conversation has to happen.
Yeah, I don't think it can be that let anything go. Like if I set up this thing today, saying that bhai, we have to kill, all Sekhris because they are basically come from some Satanist cult and they are pedophiles and they are doing this. What the QAnon does. I think it has to be. Steve Bannon should have been taken off Twitter, and I'm glad he was.
Yes, there has to be
calls for a discussion on like having clear legislation on hate speech laws to define hate speech itself. What counts as offensive legally?
I think essentially what you're saying is here that you need Twitter to do an editorial job, Twitter and Facebook. Basically what journalists do that you...
It's not journalists. Everything that is factual, journalists aren't the sole arbiters of what is truth. We can't just say, hum bas hum hi hain.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying the work required of them is that hygiene, ki this is
absolutely.
misinformation.
That is important.
No, what I'm saying is, it is absolutely necessary that this poison is contained, it's tackled. What I'm saying is that it should have democratic accountability. People who decide we are taking this down, we are regulating this. We should know who those people are. They should have, like, for example, in the government's case, if you have a food regulator, at least on paper, there's a certain law under which they exist, operate, and they are accountable. At the most, even if Modi government is whatever it is, there is at least a chance that you can vote it out. That looks unlikely, but you can vote it out. There is accountability there. That is not the same with, say, the Omadiyar people, right? Even if they don't interfere now, but on principle, they shouldn't have that power. Whoever has this power, whoever we give this power to, should be democratically accountable. There should be transparency in that. And that can only happen when you take that power away from those corporations. They have to be part of the process, yes, but it shouldn't be like entirely up to them.
I get what you're saying, and I think that is a conversation. Maybe we should have a series on this because this is a policy that is written. But Nidhi, about abiding by laws, that can't work because laws are different in different countries. So Twitter will be called out by the more liberal countries if in a country where, for example, homosexuality is illegal. I don't know, in Saudi Arabia, it's punishable by death, which is the place it's punishable.
It's possible it's punishable by death in
Several
Saudi or
countries. I mean, it's illegal. It's punishable by death even in 4 or 5 countries.
Exactly, and there's certain places in Europe where there are some laws which, that just saying the word whatever, Heil Hitler or whatever, can get you in prison in Germany, but that's not true for, say, France. Now, we, for the first time in the history of the world, are in a stage where companies traverse the world and everybody is aware of what's happening in different parts. So if it was to say, I will go by the laws of India, that in India, if a same-sex couple gets married, they have broken the law, something should be done about it, and they let it be up. The bloody Americans will say, what the hell, this Twitter, where are your principles? How can you allow this tweet in India? It becomes, it can't be law because the laws are different the world over. There have to be certain basic principles of a corporation that is, striding all across the world in different countries. And these are our laws. Now, if these don't work for you, fuck off. And then you explain to your people that we won't allow Twitter here.
So then I think what would be interesting for them to do is also just start flagging fake news. Like for someone like Amit Malviya, he puts out enough fake news that if you just start flagging that, it'll expose him in a way that you start realizing who he's targeting. And then his opinion and who he's trying to offend becomes very clear. So I feel that might work better than tagging a tweet as a...
But that's what the problem becomes, right? If it's like, for example, when Trump started, they started flagging these tweets only because Trump was putting out a lot of fake news. And there were demands to take him off Twitter. They couldn't dare to do that because he's the president of the most powerful country in the world, right?
And also has 80 million followers.
Exactly. So they ultimately they have to look at their bottom line. So they couldn't afford to do that. They worked out this compromise.
Right. So anything else on that before I move on to the letters? Raman sir, Nidhi, you have anything to add?
No.
I think everything is said.
Okay, so please keep your recommendations handy. I have a few emails and I would repeat, those of you who are listening to this for free and are students or are currently unemployed and don't have a source of income, I hope you keep continuing to get it for free and someone slimily hacks into it and sends you their password, and I will not grudge anyone that. But if you are earning, if you can afford 300 rupees a month, which is not a lot of money, that's less than a packet of cigarettes, which you shouldn't smoke in COVID times in any case. It's probably less than a beer, I'm guessing. I'm not a beer drinker. Lippy is shaking her head. I'm guessing she disagrees. But it's not that much to support journalism, and our reporters do a fantastic job. They go out there. We have a new NL Sena project up. We want to investigate the whole love jihad law, what brought it about, what is the political significance of it, who it will target and who will it benefit. So we will have a series of reports, a podcast and a video explainer around it. So that's a new NL Sena project. Please go to newslaundry.com, click on the NL Sena button on the top and contribute to that project, or just become a regular subscriber. Because if you've been whining about the media, that it's this, it's that, it's this and it's that, because the model is flawed and it's broken, just like our planet is broken. So if you can fix it, it'll just take you a couple of clicks and very little money. And then at least you are doing something to fix the media ecosystem. Otherwise, you can keep whining and peter your head and say, hi, I'm Emerjam, and peter your chhati. And since most people are like that, you decide which side of the fence you sit on. Are you the constant whiners who do fuck all? Or are you the ones who actually step up and do something? On that polite note, these are the emails. This one is from Somraj. Somraj says, this is my first mail since subscribing. There are two things I'd like to mention. In Hafta 299, you discussed the omission of Mesut Ozil from the Arsenal squad. And it was related to Ozil's comment about the Uyghur, how do you pronounce this by the way? Uyghur, okay. Oh, so the U is pronounced as we. I've been pronouncing it wrong all this time. No one corrected me. Shameless people. Uyghur Muslims. I follow Arsenal and I would like to say that his omission is due to his denial to accept the pay cut as proposed by the club. In fact, Ozil commented on the Uyghurs in December 2019, but he continued to play until the lockdown was imposed in UK, which is early March 2020. Only after the Premier League resumed and due to his refusal to accept the pay cut has he been reprimanded and the said action was taken. Moreover, his attitude in training has been a concern since 2018. He has had run-ins in the past with the coach as well. Ozil is also a supporter of Erdogan, who is a controversial figure. We need to stop relating everything to religion outright and think of other aspects as well. This is the major mindset change that the BJP has achieved in the past 6 years. Okay. And then second, almost every week there is a clamor from the lot of subscribers to bring people from the right-wing ideology to the Hafta. And Somraj has said that we don't have to pander because many of these people don't really add anything to the conversation, and it's a waste of time, and the opinions are not anything significant that actually add to the conversation. So he'd rather that we don't get that just to check a box and just continue with people who bring something on the table.
About the Ozil thing, I think I was the one who pointed it out, but we weren't saying that he was dropped because of his comments. We're saying the reaction to it, and in contrast to reaction per people, like, for example, these days, when Kopernik, when he took the knee in sport of
his career went.
Now everybody, even football in England, everywhere else, they're taking the knee because the mood has changed.
Right.
But this is still taboo. You can't still talk about China because then you'll get a pushback. So that was the discussion, not that he was dropped because of that.
Yeah,
although that actually, New York Times piece I recommended, that suggested that this also had to do something about it, if not like entirely.
Because Somraj, actually I didn't want to say that because I didn't remember and my memory is often foggy. So because even in my recollection, we did not say that he was dropped from the team because of that. We just said that the pushback he got was significant because of some of these positions. But besides, he hasn't been playing very well for a while now. And he's had run-ins with the coaches.
Yeah, I mean, he's, as they say, he's one of those luxury players no modern football team can afford, apparently. But which is like stupid because there's always Messi.
We have a non-subscriber letter which has been included by Lippy because I guess she's feeling very generous towards non-subscribers. I'm sure she'll get a subscription for Raghavendra since she has added his email, which we shall deduct from our wonderful producer Lippy's paycheck. Because she has included a non-subscribers letter. So Lippy, since it's on the document, I'll read it. But now that I've read it and our rule says that he has to be a subscriber, if he doesn't subscribe, you're subscribing for him. So he says, your commentary on the Jallikattu movie was misinformed and off the mark. The person who was supposed to report to you on it, Miss Jayashree, was also off the mark on her interpretation of Kangana's tweet. Well, in all fairness, she was just trying to interpret Kangana's tweet, and interpreting anything of Kangana is not an easy thing to do. And at the risk of being, and I told you so, and I'm sure many people will, I said something about Kangana years ago. I was right. I said something about Yoya years ago. I was right. Just watch this space. Kangana was congratulating the Jallikattu team for making it to the Oscar nomination, and what she was referring to as the movie mafia was the Hindi movie mafia, which was not favouring non-Hindi cinema and was not lobbying.
No, I think you're giving her too much importance, this letter. Importance nahi, matlab too much credibility. I don't think she thinks like that. Ki Hindi imposition hai, that's why
her
that
stance
mafia.
is basically the Indian cinema shouldn't be compromised solely by Hindi, and there's stellar movies being made in other languages as well. And I think and Jayashree misread this. And Jallikattu was a stellar movie. It was refreshing and was so far from passes around. Actually, I'm trying to see it and we can review it on Awful and Awesome. And then he says, guys, people listen to this podcast to get informed, and when you make such way of misinterpretations, it leaves a bad impression. I knew the movie and the narrative around it, so I was able to catch it. If not, I would have started hating Kangana. Well, see, Raghavendra, you should not hate or love anyone because we are saying it. And I say this, no matter who says what, you have to get your enough information and sources and make up your own mind. Now, I don't hate Kangana, but I've always disliked her and had very little respect for her, even when she was the flavour of the season. So it has nothing to do with her Jallikattu tweet. At the same time, I'm not sure whose interpretation is accurate, but I would love to see the film and make up my own mind about Jallikattu. And you need not hate Kangana. In fact, I would say you must go watch her films because she's an actor of different level, but she's completely off in the head. So watch her for the entertainment. Don't watch her for making any opinion. And she's not important to you and my life to love or hate. Matlab, asi kedi sadi kudi utte kar vyah karani hai. Te sanu ki bhai.
I understood that, though I don't understand Punjabi.
Yeah, it's not like I have to get my daughter married to her son, so who gives a fuck, they can do what the fuck they want. Then Ankit Gupta says, hi all, I want to know the status on media ownership and Nelsena project. As a contributor, I expect some transparency in this respect. At least you can tell the subscribers what the issue is and where it's stuck. It looks like one of the government schemes that was launched with great hoo-halla and nothing came of it, Ankit. Well, Ankit, actually, though, Raman sir can tell you a little more, but it is stuck because we migrated the website, we got the new design. And sir, we've already done the information and the cap table, who owns how much for how many media houses now? 5, I think, right?
We have, there are going to be around 10 to 15 of them.
No, already the ones that have been finished are like 5, 6?
5
have
we
already
have
been
finished with the write-ups. The thing is, we are just waiting for it's a tech problem. From our side, we are ready to release one every week.
Yeah, so I'll just tell Ankit what the problem is. Actually, most of the content is done, as we got into, and as you see when they are unveiled, some of the media houses where we've done the ownership structure, it is like a company owns, let's say, Media House X. So company Y owns X, then 5 people own company Y, and out of these 5 people, let's call them PCRF. Now, Mr. R also owns the company directly through another company Q, and that company Q is partly held by someone else called T, who also owns it. So, when the map was made, it was so complicated. I said that we can't have this as the artists can't be making this as a standalone graphic, because each time there's a change in ownership, bloody we'll have to redo the whole thing, and it's really complicated, and it can't be so small, because finally the design that came to us, because कंपनी में इतना छोटा हो गया था, font कुछ दिखाई नहीं दे रहा था.
So we're getting a template made.
So there'll be a tech hack. So when you hover on it, that window will pop up, so you can see these are the 10 people who own that company. So that's the reason it's got delayed. And because when we migrated the site, right now we're just trying to get the stability of the site, we're trying to get the podcast player, and then that who owns your media page is going to be a separate back end and front end solution. That's why. So I'm sorry it's taken so long, but it will be up. But it has to be up in a sustainable way, so that if someone sells a share, pata chala, we have to redo that whole graphic, and it will just drive us a little mad.
In fact, on our the sheet we keep for all our stories that are pending that we're doing, it's on top there. So it's just marked. Whenever tech gets sorted, it'll be up.
Right. Then this email is from Avikshit. That's an interesting name. Never heard that before. Avikshit says, I've just subscribed to Newslaundry for a year via a YouTube link. I have a question regarding Newslaundry's policies and stance. While I support the good work you're doing, the moral reporters must ask harder questions. I'm sure erudite reporters of Newslaundry must be more familiar than I am with the 5 filters of manufacturing consent. First and foremost is the idea of profit orientation. As an example, no one from the BPL family will spend 300 rupees a month for a Newslaundry subscription. When most of your subscribers are middle or upper middle class, why should subscribers believe that the organization will also serve the interests of those who can't pay? What about those who don't have access to the internet? What are the reasons that they should trust Newslaundry to safeguard the democratic interests? And he says, more content on Newslaundry Hindi, if you please. I apologize for any harsh words or snobbery. I wish you may find time and resources to do good reporting, and then hopefully some time to answer my query. So no, Avikshit, no offense at all. What you have said has actually been, I guess you're a new subscriber, discussed on several haftas. So I wish I had the number of hafta where we discussed this in more detail to just rattle off. But let me just quickly say, you're right. This is a flaw in the model. And I have not said, and none of our position is that this is the perfect model, but it is better than the model that exists now. And I believe if one can leave a situation better than you found it, you can do a lot more than finding the perfect solution. Yes, the reason that most of our reporting is around Delhi and metros is because most of our audience is in that. And my reporters aren't, stationed in Hoshiarpur or Rampur Mandi or any other of the 6 lakh villages around the country. And you're absolutely right. But I do believe our model is more robust than that led by advertising.
No, we also end up covering Hoshiarpur.
No, we do, but I guess...
When the farmers are visiting here now, Nidhi is virtually covering those people who stay in those areas.
Plus, not all of what we put up is behind the paywall. It's only a very limited amount of that's behind the paywall. Rest of it is free for everybody. I mean, the ground reports we have been doing about the farmer protests, the videos, they're all free for everybody.
If I could just recommend, just have a look at, I've done an interview with Avlok on Scoop Whoop on the whole model. I've discussed in a little more detail. You'll understand how the media industry works. So the internet right now is the best thing that's happened to it. And it'll just make it better and better. And just so you know that if one was to go direct to, home, I'll need about 100 to 300 crores a year, depending on the scale of my operation, to run a television channel. How will I get 100 to 300 crores? Not through subscribers. They just are right now contributing 20 to 25 lakhs a month, whereas the expenses are more than that. They're about 30 to 35 lakhs a month. Who will I depend on? I'll depend on Mr. Modi. Who will give me the license? Mr. Modi. Who will give me the ads? Mr. Ambani. So you really think that model is better?
Mr. Modi is tend to cancel our lessons.
So
What
it's
will he give us?
it's a
Also
little
related to
more-
this, I've been thinking a little about this. I mean, I know this is currently the best model. I mean, you don't take ads. But suppose, I mean, this is kind of a moral problem. Suppose there is this small business and he wants to advertise, but he doesn't want to be associated with any of the, like the Rabbit, these things. So he comes to News Laundry and he says, I want to advertise you because I trust you. I want my product to go to the people who are your audiences. So if you turn him down, isn't that a moral kind of a problem or doing a disservice to them?
Take good advertisers on. You mean like
No, I'm saying it's a kind of
Ethical
but then
advertising.
where do you draw the line?
I've actually thought of this and I've also discussed it with Chitranshu. And the solution that I had thought of, one is that one wouldn't do it in the initial days, because if you position your product as an ad-free product, it should be ad-free. Like, I do believe that many of these other websites that are doing a fantastic job, I think the reporting is great. I think Newsmin's reporting is great, and they've also got a subscriber model. I think if you're asking for subscription, your website should be completely clean. Because when people see ads, they are less likely to contribute, even if those ads are morally and otherwise upright. I think positioning your product is the first problem. So you'll sacrifice that. And if you can't position your product as a clean ad-free product, that cannot be your main source. I mean, that's one problem. The second thing that I had said is that we should have on one page, and we will, I mean, after the whole Who Owns a Media page is done, so just so you know, this is the page we're working on. Quarter on quarter, you'll see how much we have spent and how much we have made. And that shortfall, since subscribers are not topping it up, we will say these are the 5 people who have given us offered for a banner ad. Who should we give it to? And let the subscribers decide. And we have let the subscribers decide one thing in the past, where we had put up a poll, should we take anonymous pieces or not? Because I was completely against taking anonymous pieces. It doesn't matter who they're coming from. And there were some people in office who were in favor that as long as the editors know, and then you put it out to vote for subscribers, and subscribers voted in favor of it. So I was overruled at that time. So, I mean, that is a solution that we're thinking of.
this is too much
It's
democracy.
just like that, one of those moral problems
Yeah,
that
yeah.
just came up.
No, but like, okay, no. But asking people which advertiser should you take is also quite, it's a bit...
Yeah,
I mean, who
because
draws the line and where? What is an ethic?
But so I said
because suppose Mukesh
some
Bhai
decisions-
says, all my employees have to become subscribers of News Laundry. And all of you have to vote that you have to take a Reliance ad.
Also, how do you check whether someone, I mean, small business,
That's
you'll
the thing.
accept,
See, for example,
I can trust, okay, someone you know, your friend comes and you vouch for them, but how do you check a small business really? That's also another,
that's a
I mean, it's
I'll
not,
just give you an example. So Vedanta, I mean, a lot of good journalists who I have read, who I respect, they did good reporting, like say in Chhattisgarh and elsewhere, and how Vedanta, I mean, practically has blood on their hands. And then they happily went and accepted, say for example, the Ramnath Goenka Award, which is sponsored by Vedanta.
sponsored by Vedanta.
Yes,
I thought it's
it
the
was.
memorial.
I don't know
that,
the latest
okay.
one, but it used to be. So what do you do?
You take the money, always take the money.
No, I think
When it comes
like
to for
capitalist.
journalists, like I think journalists should award
Says-
money, take it.
So you were saying?
Take the money and do what you want. जो केजरीवाल ने बोला था वोटर्स को आप पैसे ले
आप
लो
settle
लेकिन
कर
वोट उसी को करो जिसको करना. So keep your conscience clear, but take the money.
it has to be our call. We have to do our due diligence, and then we need to opt for these people, whether we want them to be part of us or not. And then we need to be transparent about it. So if anybody has a question, anybody has an objection, they can raise those objections, and we should be able to meet those, respond to those objections. So I don't think too much democratization is also, I mean, it may, make it a khichdi.
Or we can just let Yogendra Yadav tell us. But, okay. So,
इतना भी बुरा नहीं है. I mean, we have really trashed him today.
okay, maybe we were a little too unfair. I mean, I agree with you. I think he's a very sweet guy. I will repeat. Actually, one should just put it out there because someone on Twitter
Now
also
you're
said,
saying he's a very sweet guy. इतना सब कुछ बोलने के
No,
बाद
but the kind of pieces he's been writing lately, they're like really bizarre. I mean, those are really, I mean, but that's about his work, and that's like really trash. The couple of pieces he wrote about OSE and Muslims and all that recently.
let me just say, and this, I just saw a film called Hillbilly Elegy, which I'll also recommend. I mean, people are not black or white, and I think that film does it so well, especially a parent, who can be so destructive and horrible to your child at the same time being so wonderful to your child. I think it's a must-watch film. But so why I say that is that even people who have a very good moral kind of compass and are saying the right thing, vanity can afflict them as well. Like, probably all of who wrote Tess and Far From the Madding Crowd and Jude the
Thomas
Obscure?
Hardy.
Thomas Hardy. I mean, all his heroines were just too vain, no matter how wonderful they were. And I think Yogendra Yadav has the Thomas Hardy heroine weakness. Vanity is just takes over.
Even, some of the greatest leaders, like...
You started the conversation with, let me say he's nice, and ended it with saying he has a Thomas Hardy heroine complex.
No, I'm just saying that he is wonderful in a lot of other ways, but vanity gets the better of us.
Vanity, it's even true of Mahatma Gandhi. It's true of Martin Luther King.
One thing, vanity is something you should,
Yeah.
But
really
then again, those people
clear.
knew how to sort of keep it within the limit and just do the work.
You need good counsel around you, actually, that can keep bringing you down and keep telling you,
For that, you need a party and an organization. If you're one man...
No, even then, that doesn't guarantee anything. The only people who can come close enough to you to shit on you are if they're only peacocks and parrots. Then you ain't changing nothing, No one else can shit on you. So, this email is Vijay Krishnan. Vijay, this is a very long email, so I won't read the whole thing. But because today, for some reason, we haven't got so many mails, which is quite nice, because otherwise we get so many and I'm always stressed that how will I finish them. Vijay says, protests are not meant to be convenient. This has been part of many recent Hafta conversations, and you have real street cred with Abhinandan's participation in the RTI protests and the Anna movement. If you notice, Vijay always call it the Jan Lokpal movement, not the Anna movement. He was the mascot. He wasn't the movement. Just saying. But somehow this doesn't come through your conversation this week. You had a better discussion on when the SC ruled on Shaheen Bagh, but in my opinion, didn't go far enough. I'm hoping to provoke that broader discussion which seems necessary for our times, especially given the nature of party in power, which in my reading seems not to understand or respect differing views. India may have a glorious history of street protest, but there is no right to inconvenience other people with your protest. If you call a hartar or block a road, the state can legitimately punish you for inconveniencing your fellow citizens. You could be perfectly peaceful grandmother asking for equal treatment regarding citizenship or drunken Bharati with a gun. I don't see nuance in this. And FWIW, what does that mean?
For what it's worth.
For what it's worth, I don't think Gandhi, Nehru, JP were ignorant of this, or that they thought it was unfair that they got chucked in jail for their acts of civil disobedience. But they took satisfaction from the broad support from the general population. Listening to the media narrative at least, it sounds like this distinction is lost. That protests may have reasonable bases, but when they cross a certain line, the state does get to intervene, and both are perfectly legitimate. So you're saying both are right in what they're doing. What is the goal of a protest? To cause inconvenience, or to demonstrate that people can be mobilized on your issue? Or to raise awareness about it among people who aren't directly affected, but might empathize? I think Abhinandan has spoken about the way organizers ensure that there is broad understanding of this ultimate agenda. It seems like these current leaderless protests don't have much of that. Of course, there is the other side, that if the state wants to clamp down on protests, it's on them to ensure that they provide real and effective grievance redressal within the bounds of the law and an actual consultative process, neither of which are as good as they should be. To me, this is a good discussion to have because there's the necessary tension. So to hear Jayashree so easily declare that any harm that comes from protests are side effects and must be accepted is just silly. And while she did get some pushback, I wish it had been substantive rather than a glib acceptance of the right to protest trope and an essentializing of Jat lumpenness. P.S. This is satire, and in Malayalam, the movie that covers much of this ground is something called Narendra Makkan Jayakanthan Vaka. Please do watch it with subtitles for a takedown of protest culture. That is also a love letter of sorts. This has been part of many recent conversations.
Kerala Hartal is a thing there, no? Apparently, people are really fed up with it also. Like, people just going on protests randomly and not working is...
Vijay
at least my
Krishnan,
friends from there tell me that.
Very articulate, yeah. I think this is a discussion we should have next time. We should give like 20 minutes to discussion of protests. That's a good idea. We'll come prepared. Vijay, please put that. We should discuss this in the next hafta with some sort of... Jayashree will also be there. On that note, does anyone have anything to add to any of the emails? Any comments or responses? Nidhi, Raman, Manisha and Mehraj?
No, I was going to say something about this, but since we are going to discuss it anyway
we'll
next
discuss
week,
it.
so yeah, we'll leave it for that.
All right. So I have a wonderful song today dedicated to everybody. And I think it gives you an idea of why the pushback has been so intense when the attack happened on the Punjabi protesters. But let's start with Nidhi. What recommendations do you have to enrich the lives of our listeners?
So I have two recommendations. One is Meghnad's explainer to the farm bills, because I think it's important to understand that before speaking about the farm laws. And the other one I want to recommend is a book called Days and Nights of Love and War by journalist Eduardo Galeano, if I'm pronouncing his name right. It's a book written during the military regime in Uruguay in 1970s, and it's a sort of reporter's diary of sorts that he keeps while reporting. And so through the book, he's oscillating between telling us what he reported on and then his feelings and the relationship between him and the people he interviews and speaks to. And it's basically a memoir of the human condition during the military regime. And I, as a young journalist, really enjoyed reading it, and also motivates me to keep that sort of diary.
Thank you. Raman sir?
There's a picture Netflix movie called Module, M-O-J-U-L, Module. This is based on a report, which appeared in New York. This is on the ISIS. This is about the people, who lost their loved ones to these ISIS guys, or how they formed their group. They were part of the army or the police, but then they made their own group called SWAT, and how they try to, eliminate ISIS one by one. It's a very good movie. And I will also recommend our coverage on the farmers. Many more to come. Besides the reporter, I think most probably we'll get a good report by Anumeya Yadav, who has been dealing with these people for a very long time. So please look for our reports.
Mehraj?
Yes, please go through our coverage of the farmers' protests, the videos, the reports, and wonderful work Nidhi and Basant have done. Apart from that, there are two things. One is a piece. It's an old piece from 2012. It was published on the American Conservative, of all places. It's called The Revolt of the Rich. It explains what we were talking about, giving power to corporations, how they tend to take over, the elite tend to take over the societies and the disastrous consequences of that. The other piece is, recently it's a report in the Kashmir Wala. It's about this neighborhood in Srinagar, which has been being terrorized by the army for the last couple of weeks after an attack on the army. And there is even allegations that some of the army officers forced the people they were beating up to shout Jai Shri Ram. So these are the recommendations.
Manisha?
So since Punjab is the flavor of the past 2 weeks, one poem by one of my favorite poems by this guy called Pash. It's called Sabse Khatarnak, and I'll read just a few lines from it. It says, Sabse khatarnak hota hai murda shanti se bhar jana, तड़प का ना होना, सब सहन कर जाना, घर से निकलना काम पर और काम से लौटकर घर जाना, सबसे खतरनाक होता है हमारे सपनों का मर जाना. So he's this revolutionary poet who's written some really amazing poetry. This one's on Lalantop. I found a link on Lalantop where they've put the poem and explained a bit about it. A piece by Aman Sandhu in Mumbai Mirror that kind of looks at a bit of this question that we were talking about, that why are the Punjabis so fearless and their history of resilience. I think there's still a little bit of romanticization around this. I mean, some of the scenes from the protests make me a bit uncomfortable. It reminds me of the whole macho, jut kind of whatever, like that guy standing with the water pipe. It's impressive, but that kind of aggression, I've done my college in Chandigarh. I don't have much liking for that. But anyway, it looks at that. I would like to read something a little more neutral though on this, that looks at this notion of machoism, aggression and resilience in a more kind of a neutral way. But this is still an interesting piece. Harish Damodaran's piece that explains the farmers' protests and what they want and what could be possibly negotiated. I think it's a very balanced, good piece, so you should read that. And I think Pratap Bhanu Mehta's column also really hit the nail on the head, where he basically sums up, the heart of the problem here, which is farmers' fears of losing their value as people who will shape agriculture, rather than people who will just be impacted by policy on agriculture. And of course, don't forget to watch Nidhi's interaction with 4 farmers from the agitation. Please take 9 minutes out of your time and watch it till the end. They're really articulate, and it really captures beautifully all the anger that people are facing against the media, and also shatters stereotypes. So watch that.
Okay, I have 2 recommendations. Actually 3. One is my own piece, which I wrote about a year ago on the Golden Temple. Do check it out, which talks about the equilibrium between having a sort of a sympathetic view of an outright terrorist while also the army that fought him.
Which is like the best book to read if you want to read about Bhindranwala and his kind of hold on people? Or
I would say read Satish Jacob and Mark Tully's Amritsar, Mrs. Gandhi's Last Battle. If you actually read that and General Brag's Operation Blue Star, like one after the other, that gives you the entire context of the Punjab problem, the build-up, and especially the urgency why she actually sent tanks in. I mean, she wasn't an idiot. She sent tanks in because Bhindranwale had said, I think it was May. So what month was it when it happened? It was peak summer, April or May, when Operation Blue Star happened. It was basically...
April.
I think he had said on the 6th that all Sikhs from across the country get into your cars and come to Amritsar and we will take
converge
over.
there.
We will raise the Khalistan flag. So she had that deadline and people had started doing it. So she had to get him out before that. So many people said, why didn't she just cut off the water and electricity and force them out? It would be too late. By that time, hundreds and thousands of Sikhs would have... So then there would be the army with the bunch of terrorists inside, heavily armed, and people coming from all across. So she had to go in. It was like she had painted herself into a corner. It was...
and those were deadly years. I mean, they were deadly really, years. From what I hear at least.
And also it was just by fluke that Satish Jacob and Mark Tully stayed back and saw all those bodies being thrown, because all the other journalists all the journalists staying in one hotel. These guys, because they didn't book in time and they weren't as well organized as Newslaundry reporters are, they didn't get a booking in that hotel. So they had to go to some other hotel. So when the authorities came and marched everybody out, they went to the hotel all the reporters were. Now they didn't know these guys had gotten to some other shady hotel somewhere because they didn't get a booking here. वो रह गए. Nice. So then they got to see all the shit that other reporters didn't get to see. Yeah. So do check out that piece. Then the other is a podcast called Swamp Gravy. It's a very interesting podcast of how art actually got economic revival of a small town in America, which also all those people who say art क्या करता है बहुत कुछ करता है, humanities बहुत कुछ करती है, but it actually has a direct economic impact as well. It's a fascinating story. And the last thing I'd like to recommend is a film that really I loved. It's called Hillbilly Elegy. It's on Netflix. It's such an interesting film because it makes you realize how parenting is such a tricky business. While, you can do so much damage to a child, yet, your contribution to that child becoming what he or she is also significant. And while you can hate your parent and still love them at the same time, it's beautifully done. I think it's a very good film.
Oh, Hillbilly Elegy. I heard allergy.
Elegy. So on that note, thank you, Raman sir. Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you, Mehraj. Thank you, Manisha. Do join us next week on an Hafta. Do write into us at contact@newslaundry.com. I repeat, contact@newslaundry.com with your critique, criticism, inputs, feedback. Try to keep it polite and not too aggressive, because that kind of triggers me to be aggressive back, and that's never a nice thing. So, on that note, have a wonderful weekend.
All the Newslaundry podcasts are available on Stitcher, iTunes, and any other podcast platform.
Please subscribe to Newslaundry. Help us keep news independent. To catch all our podcasts on news, pop culture, current affairs and sport, visit newslaundry.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.